Well, friends, welcome back to this series of lectures. Today, let us deal with the period of Shah Jahan. Till the previous lecture, we reached the stage when we saw that Jahangir, in fact, was a mixed baggage. He tried to follow the policies initiated by his father Akbar. The policy of Selekul, generally speaking, continued during this period, but in spite of his attempts, there were many misunderstandings between professors of a number of faiths. For example, the incident of Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi, the incident of Guru Arjan, the incident of Qazi Nurullah Shustari, the misunderstanding which occurred in Gujarat with the Jain bhikshus, so on and so forth. So we have seen that there were, in spite of the fact that Jahangir was largely, the state under Jahangir was largely trying to follow the same precepts as those of Akbar, but there was a certain shift which started occurring. Now let us come to the period of Jahangir's son Shah Jahan. As all of you know, that Shah Jahan is one of the most famous of the Mughal emperors. He is the person who is the creator of the world famous Taj Mahal. It is said that the empire during the period of Shah Jahan was much more greater than that which existed under his grandfather Akbar. He presided over an empire which expanded, whose extent was from Balkh down to the Deccan. And we can easily say that even the revenues which were coming to the state under Shah Jahan, they were also greater than the revenues taken together under Akbar. But in spite of all these facts, it appears that as far as Shah Jahan's dealing with the various religions in his kingdom were concerned, there was a marked shift from the policies of his father and grandfather. If the period of Jahangir saw certain misunderstandings, it appears that under Shah Jahan there was a deliberate attempt to side with the Turani elements of the court. Although I can at the very outset say that the equilibrium between the Turanis, Iranis, Hindus, Muslims, Shias, Sunnis, Marathas, Rajputs was not actually, disturbed. Largely speaking, the various compositions of these ethnic, religious, racial groups remained as such, but still we find that there was a change in the emphasis. Shah Jahan does not appear to have followed the policy of Sulhekul, at least not expressly. Um, as far as Shah Jahan is concerned, generally, if you read the books which have been written on him, you would find that he appears to be a very personally speaking an orthodox character. Although, as you might be aware, that he was a person whose mother was a Rajput. He was, in fact, Shah Jahan was born to a Rajput mother. The father of Shah Jahan was also a man who was half Rajput, Jahangir's mother, although we are not sure of her name, but she was also a Hindu, probably a Rajput. So the Rajput blood was very much, the Hindu blood was very much in the veins of Shah Jahan, but in spite of that fact, we find that the same type of treatment which was given to the Rajputs and Hindus and other religious groups uh, during the reign of his grandfather and his father does not appear to have been sustained. Although, let me also point out that it would also be not correct to say that Shah Jahan started raising Islam in danger. There are certain scholars, I might call them pseudo scholars, who try to teach and try to say in the class that Shah Jahan was extremely orthodox and he tried to reverse the policy of Akbar. That also is not the truth. And what were Let us see what, in fact, changed during the period of Shah Jahan, and let us also discuss those things which, in fact, continued from the earlier periods during the reign of Shah Jahan. Now, if you see certain of the measures which Shah Jahan took soon after coming to the throne, these shifts in the policies as well as continuities, they get reflected. Now, for example, on his accession, the uh, probably, I mean, there are historians who try to point out, for example, Saxena points out that this, for example, Saxena points out that this was the doing away of, sajda was an assertion of his Islamic identity. You cannot bow before anyone but before God. So sajda was done away with. But then, although sajda was done away with, but zamibos continued. What was zamibos? Zami, zamibos is nothing but another version of sajda. आज आप सलाम करते हैं, और जब आप आदाब या सलाम करते हैं, जो एक मुस्लिम सोसाइटी में, जो एक मुस्लिम सोसाइटी में खास खास तौर से नॉर्थ इंडिया में जो मुस्लिम सैल्यूटेशंस है वो है अस्सलाम वालेकुम, सैल्यूटेशंस है वो है अस्सलाम वालेकुम। लेकिन आमतौर से आपको ये मिलेगा कि जब सलाम आप करते हैं, और अब आप अगर सेंट्रल एशिया चले जाएं या ईरानियन लैंड्स में चले जाएं तो आपको ये मिलेगा, यहाँ दिल पे हाथ रख के सलाम। लेकिन हिंदुस्तान में, खासतौर से नॉर्थ इंडिया में, और प्रोबेबली अंडर इवन दी निजाम्स ऑफ हैदराबाद, जो तरीका था वो हाथ उठा, वेर आप हाथ को एक लेवल से ऊपर ले जाते हैं और फिर नीचे लाते हैं, फिर ऊपर ले जाते हैं, फिर नीचे ले जाते हैं। आदाब करने का जो एक सिलसिला है, दैट इज डिराइव फ्रॉम द कंसेप्ट ऑफ zamibos, where a person would in fact bow, and after bowing touch the soil, and then bring the his palm and touch his forehead, and he would do it 4 times like this. And इसी चीज को जो जमी बोस कहलाता था, इसी को अगर आप थोड़ा सा शॉर्टन कर दें, इसी को अगर आप थोड़ा सा शॉर्टन कर दें, तो इस फॉर्म में आ जाता है, वेर यू आर जस्ट gesturing your hand as if it's going to the ground and then coming back and touching your forehead. So this concept of zamibos, where now it is not the proper sajda, where you are keeping your forehead on the ground. You're not doing that. You're just placing your hand on the ground and touching it with your forehead. That was the concept of zamibos, which continued during the period of, in fact, encouraged during the period of Shah Jahan. This is also known as chahar taslim, क्योंकि 4 बार करते हैं, chahar taslimat or chahar taslim. The chahar taslim was in fact initiated, encouraged from 1636-37 onwards. Instead of pabos, where you almost lie down with your forehead touching the ground, to zamibos and chahar taslim were the new ways when you paid obeisance to your lord, to your king, or to any of your senior. Not only that, but there were certain other things, some which continued, some others which changed. For example, the Muslim festivals, especially the months of Ramzan, the month of fasting, the month of Muharram, when the incident of Karbala took place, the Rajab, this is also celebrated among the Muslims. It's a very sacred month. Shaban, the month of Eid. Similarly, Rabiul Awwal. These were certain of the months which were given much importance. Muslim festivals like Eid, uh, what you call Bakrid is not so much heard about, but Eid, and you can say both the Eids, probably Ramzan Eid and the one which comes after, where you give sacrifices, the Bakrid, they were in fact celebrated to quite an extent. Shab-e Barat, the night of deliverance, when lights were just like in Diwali, it was celebrated with pyrotechny and whatnot. And of course, going and coming from Hajj, that was very much in precedence during this period. It was a very auspicious occasion which is celebrated during the period of Shahjahan. Not only that, we find that the Shia of Shahjahan. Not only that, we find that the Shia rulers of Golconda, they are in fact forced to follow the Shia customs. For example, the Sunni customs, they are forced to follow the Sunni customs instead of the Shia customs, which were their own. The Sunni kalima was thrust down their throats for some time. All type of Sunni rituals, they were encouraged during this period as far as the ruler of Golconda was concerned. And this was happening in the year 1636, when 35-36, when a treaty with Golconda was signed between Shahjahan and the ruler of Golconda. Not only that, there were certain things which were done away with. We do not hear of many of the Hindu festivals being celebrated. We know that Holi and Diwali and Raksha Bandhan, they were the festivals which were much celebrated under Akbar and Jahangir. But suddenly, under Shah Jahan, their importance appears to have come down. Jharoka Darshan, it continued. It was to be then abolished by Aurangzeb. The emperor continued to come on the Jharoka without any compunction. So were other traditions, for example, Tuladan, the whole concept of weighing the ruler or important personages on their birthdays and other important occasions in measures of gold and silver and other precious things. Tuladan, which was an important ceremony in the court, especially on the birthdays of the emperors, that continued. Not only on the date of birth, but also when they would return victorious from some place, the Tuladan would take place. The Ilahi calendar, the calendar which was initiated by Akbar, the Ilahi era, as against the Hijri era. Uh, although Saxena says that it was done away with, but we know, we have evidence, we have documents. For example, in Amale Saleh, whenever Saleh Kambo gives the dates, he also gives the Ilahi dates of the same incident which he is mentioning in the Islamic calendar. जो हिजरी कैलेंडर में चीज दे रहे हैं उसी को पे इलाही कैलेंडर में भी वो रिपीट करते हैं, तो दैट इज कंटिन्यूइंग अंडर दैट. The recruitment of and maintenance of the astrologers in the court, playing of music, recruitment of the musicians and painters and so on and so forth, that continued during the reign of Shahjahan. तो थोड़ी सी चीजें एक आध है जहां फर्क होता है. ऐसा लगता है कि जैसे जरा सा इम्फेसिस है मुस्लिम फेस्टिवल्स पे, थोड़ा सा हिंदू. That can also be one of the facts, that because there is some assertion of his Islamic identity, the Persian chroniclers of that period are avoiding to mention the facts which they may think would go against, or Jahangir would, Shahjahan would probably not like them not being mentioned, left out. That is also there. Whatever the case may be, कुछ चीजें ऐसी हैं कि जहां शायद कुछ कमी हो गई थी क्योंकि उनके बारे में कम तस्करा आता है, लेकिन उसके साथ में बहुत सी ऐसी चीजें थी जो बाद में when we come to Aurangzeb's period we would find that those things were being identified and were thus done away with, if you believe certain of the modern writers. उस पर भी कुछ contestations किए जा सकते हैं. One may not totally agree with that view that they were all done away with. When I come to Aurangzeb, we would, in fact, dealing with the fact when there was an economic crisis going on, where was the possibility of Fatullah Dan, for example? But we will come to that later on. So, but then there is an argument that all these things which were considered Hindu or non-Muslim were discontinued under Aurangzeb, although they continued to function in the court of Shahjahan himself. But one thing is very clear, जो ये शिफ्ट हुए, जो थोड़ा बहुत चेंजेस आए, जो बट नेचुरल है किसी भी रेंज में, किसी की पर्सनालिटी के बदलने के बाद थोड़ा बहुत चेंजेस तो आने जरूरी हैं. But in spite of that, there is one thing which is very, pertinent for us to note for the reign of Shahjahan, and that is the fact that Shahjahan very consciously tried to emphasize his Central Asian origins. Shahjahan, for example, took up the title of Sahib Qiran Sani. Sahib Qiran was the title of Temur, the ruler, the Central Asian ruler, from whom the Mughals traced their origin. Tamerlane, and it was to him who was supposed to be their ancestor. And Babur's claim, remember, to Hindustan was the fact that Hindustan, the North India at least, had been part of the Timurid Empire, and that is why it was his right to rule over it. तो एक Timurid origin तो था, ये अपने को Timurid कहते भी थे, तो ऐसा नहीं है कि पहली बार शाहजहां इस चीज को कर रहा हो. Not that I'm not saying, or none of the historians have tried to argue that it is for the first time that Shahjahan is trying to claim this Timurid origin. Almost all the rulers have done that. All the Mughal rulers in India, they tried in the They took pride in the fact that they are Timurids, but none of them took up the title that they are Timurids, but none of them took up the title of Sahib Iranis. While we were dealing with the reign of Akbar, or for that matter, uh, of Jahangir, if you read the accounts of his period, even if you go back to Babar, खासतौर से बाबरनामा में it comes out very clear that the Mughals till this time would very proudly try to take back their origins to both the Timurids as well as the Mongols. दोनों origins को. Remember when I was dealing with Babar, I told you that he took the name of Timur with much pride. He would tell के फला ट्राइब जो है या फला लोग जो हैं वो टर्किश हैं और हम भी टर्किश हैं वो भी टर्किश हैं तो उनको परेशान मत कीजिएगा. He would also claim that the most cultured people are the Timurids. He found almost all the Mongols uncouth, although he takes pride in telling us about his maternal grandfather, Changiz Khan. The whole, incident of Elanqua is related by Abul Fazl to trace back the origin to divine origins. In spite of the fact, नाम ले रहे हैं उनका, लेकिन ज्यादातर आइडेंटिटी जो है वो तैमूर के साथ, लेकिन नाम ले रहे हैं. They also never neglect the Mongol origins. Remember what Badaini tells us कि जो मंगोल ट्रेडिशंस हैं वो अकबर के पीरियड में ऐसे हो गए हैं नक्शा बर आब, जैसे पानी के ऊपर आप स्केच बनाए. दैट इज ऑल देयर, वी नो दैट. बट इन स्पाइट ऑफ दैट, चाहे नेम सर्विस के लिए, फॉर द नेम सेक, दे वुड टेक even their Mongol origin as one of the things which had to be discussed, which had to be told, which had to be emphasized. But as far as Shahjahan is concerned, he only talks about his Timurid origins. So much so that he starts taking up a title which once belonged to Temur himself, Sahib Qiran. The master Qiran of the age. Qiran या करन कहते हैं टाइम को. साहिब master. Sahib Qiran, the master of the age. That was the title which was taken up by Timur. And now Shahjahan starts Iranis Sani. Sani means second. तो इतना ज्यादा ये emphasize करते हैं अपने Timurid origin को, that Shahjahan in fact starts calling himself that he is the second Temur, or he is the Temur of the age during which he was living. So in a way, he tried to take up the leadership of the Turani elements within India. And he also started looking towards Turan instead of looking towards the Deccan. And thus we find that much numerical progress is found as far as the higher and medium levels of the nobility is concerned of the Turanis. So between, for example, 1636 to 1656-57, so 1636 38 से लेके और एंड तक there is an emphasis on the two elements in the code. In spite emphasis on the Turani elements, one thing is there, that the equilibrium between the various groups was not disturbed at all. प्रीसिडेंस दी गई, थोड़ा सा उठाया गया, लेकिन इतना नहीं उठा लिया गया कि ईरानी दब के बुरा मान जाए या राजपूतों के या दूसरा ग्रुप को ये एहसास होने लगे कि वी आर बीइंग नेग्लेक्टेड. नथिंग ऑफ दैट सॉर्ट टुक प्लेस. द ओनली थिंग इज कि हाँ, अब ये थोड़ा थोड़ा वी आर बीइंग नेग्लेक्टेड. नथिंग ऑफ दैट सॉर्ट टुक प्लेस. द ओनली थिंग इज कि हाँ, अब ये थोड़ा थोड़ा सा लोगों को ये आइडिया लग जाए कि ये थोड़ा जो झुकाव है इनका, दैट इज टुवर्ड्स द तुरानीस. Even the Rajputs. Now, one would expect that, given the fact that he was trying to, according to certain historians, emphasizing his Sunni origins, he was trying to emphasize Islam, the emphasis of Islam as against Hinduism. इनके बारे में कहा जाता है. One of the natural corollary of that should have been the emphasis on the Turanis. We are saying that there was certain emphasis which was given, but on the it should also reflect on the fact that the Rajputs should get their positions decrease होना चाहिए उनकी position में, but nothing of that sort. Now take for example the Rathors. Do you know who the Rathors are? Rathors are that group of Rajput nobles to whom the mother of Shahjahan belonged. She was also a Rathor princess. They are related to the Mughals by this time. जैसे कि Kachwahas through marriage alliances were related to the Mughals under Akbar and Jahangir. Now we find that Rathors emerged from the period of Jahangir onwards, and by Shah Jahan you can say कि कई Rathor chieftains तो इनके मामा थे, because they were related to his mother. And now we find they were related to his mother. And now we find that certain Rathor chieftains were given high positions, and the enhancement in their mansab was very quick. जल्दी जल्दी उनके मनसब was very quick. जल्दी जल्दी उनके मनसब बढ़ाए गए थे. For example, look at Mahesh Das Rathor. If you look at the the rise of Mahesh Das Rathor, और ये चीज जो है वो अथर अली नहीं पॉइंट आउट कर रहे हैं सिर्फ, या आप कहें कि अलीगढ़ स्कूल के हिस्टोरियंस they are trying to wash the Mughals and thus they are pointing out these facts. No, it is not the school who is doing that. Saxena himself, who is writing the book on Shah Jahan, or for that matter, S.R. Sharma, Chiri Ram Sharma, who has written the book on the religious policy of the Mughals, where he tries to show कहाँ कहाँ इन्होंने ज़ाब्तियाँ की थी, कहाँ क्या किया था. S.R. Sharma pointing out, if you read his book, which incidentally you will find if you search on the internet, the PDF of S.R. Sharma's religious policy is available on the internet. You can Google it. There is a site known as Internet Archives. You Google for it, you can download it, save it in your computer, and read it in leisure. Now, S.R. Sharma points out that if you look at Mahesh Das and his mansab, at the point when he was appointed in 1634-35, His mansab was 500 zat and 400 sawar. बिल्कुल मामूली सा मनसब था. All those who have been students of medieval India know that the technically the nobility starts from 500 mansab onwards. 500 या 500 समथिंग अगर आपका है तभी आपको उमरा में काउंट किया जाएगा. उमरा उज़्ज़ाम तो 1000 एंड अबव होंगे, 2000 एंड अबव होंगे. लेकिन 500 अगर आपके, इफ योर रैंक इज बिलो 500, यू मे बी अ ब्यूरोक्रेट, बाबू हैं आप, but you cannot be known as a noble. So this person in 1634-35 was a noble, but with the basis of ranks of the nobility, 500 zat, 400 sawar. But gradually, almost every year, he was given enhancements. So much so that by 1646-47, S.R. Sharma says that his rank went up to 4,000. He became one of the Umarai Uzzam, one of the grandees of the empire. अभी और भी बढ़ सकते थे वो, but still very quickly, within a matter of 10-12 years, from a very basic position, his position was enhanced. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ तुरानियों की पोजीशन पे थोड़ा बहुत इजाफा किया जा रहा था. Even Rajputs, they were being given positions and quite frequently. This is one of the examples which I am giving. For details, I would recommend that please go through the work of Professor M. Athar Ali. उनकी apparatus of an empire, जो एक डिक्शनरी है. Apparatus of an Empire is a dictionary of nobles prepared by Professor M. Athar Ali, where apart from an introduction where he introduces what a mansab is, what is a jagir, he then goes on to give a list of nobles. That is, a list which is given year-wise, how, in which year, what type of rank a particular noble was enjoying, and then along with that he also gives you the source कि किस रिकॉर्ड में, किस प्राइमरी सोर्स में ये इंफॉर्मेशन मिलती है. और वो पेज आफ्टर पेज आप उसका हर नंबर करके आप देते हैं, एंड यू कैन ग्रेजुअली सी हाउ द इंक्रीज और डिक्रीज और whatever changes were being coming in the career of a particular noble. And in this book, in this apparatus, he deals with Akbar, Jahangir, and Shahjahan. Aurangzeb ka he deals in his book Mughal Nobility and the Aurangzeb. In fact, the second volume of this work, which M. Athar Ali was going to bring out, he had prepared a rough draft, but unfortunately, it printed or completed, kabhi published nahi ho paya. That is very unfortunate. But that dealt with the period in the post-Aurangzeb period, जहाँ पे उन्होंने बिल्कुल वहां से लेके और बहादुर शाह जफर तक के पीरियड में हजार जो नोबल्स है उनका उसी तरह बड़ा पेनस्टेकिंग तरीके से लिस्ट बनाई थी. That was one of the sources. So if you go there, you would find the details of how various Rajputs and various other groups under Shahjahan were being treated. So I have cited for this lecture only one case, but if you go through M. Athar Ali's dictionary, you would find this throughout, that there was not a neglect of any of the Rajput families in the period of Shah Jahan. Although, as I said, there was some emphasis as far as the position of the Turanis was concerned. Now, let us look at the what was happening as far as the position of the central ministers was concerned. मोदी जी कहते हैं सबका साथ सबका विकास. कितना विकास उन्होंने माइनॉरिटीज का किया, कितने माइनॉरिटीज हैं जो उनके मिनिस्ट्रीज में शामिल होते हैं, एक्सेप्ट one or two. Where are they? And now look at the. Let us see what was there as far as Shahjahan's period was concerned. Emma thoroughly has shown that during the reign of entire period of Shahjahan, although there was an emphasis which was given to the Turanis, but the Irani domination in the ministry continued. जो सेंट्रल मिनिस्टर्स की पोस्ट में ईरानीज जो आमतौर से शिया होते थे, अब तक ये कहा जाता है बहुत से हिस्टोरियंस में यहाँ इस पब्लिक जो ये बताते हैं कि सुन्नी ओरिजिन को अपना शाहजहां जो थे वो एम्फसाइज करते थे, और वो जो थे वो एक तरीके से पक्के मर्द मुजाहिद थे, उसी अंदाज के जैसे औरंगजेब थे. तो अगर पक्के मर्द मुजाहिद सुन्नी थे तो फिर शियों को क्यों कंटिन्यू करवा रहे थे? उन लोगों का ख्याल ये बहुत से हिस्टोरियंस का कि फॉर एग्जांपल जैसे ही आप पूछेंगे दे वुड से दैट लुक हियर ही अपोज्ड नूरजहां बेगम, he was along with Muhammad Khan, or Muhammad Khan was supporting him in the overthrow of the Noor Jahan junta. In fact, this is also argued that the whole clique of Noor Jahan, the position of Noor Jahan came to suffer soon after Shah Jahan came to power, and all of them were done away with. हो सकता है कोई एक क्लिक को इन्होंने दूर कर दिया हो, जो लोग उनके पॉलिटिकल राइवल्स हैं उनको दूर कर दिया हो, लेकिन अगर ये जो ऑथेंटिक इंफॉर्मेशन जो एम अथर अली के रिकॉर्ड्स में मिलती है, जहां एक एक सोर्स एक एक प्राइमरी डॉक्यूमेंट साइटेड है, कब किस आदमी को कौन सी पोजीशन दी गई, कितने साल, कितने दिन, कितने महीने that particular person continued in which particular post, then the total figure which you get is that the Iranians continued to predominate as far as the central ministry under Shah Jahan was concerned. Asaf Khan was the only wakil under Shah Jahan. And he continued for a number of years. ऐसा नहीं है कि आसफ खान को हटा दिया था. There was one another, a wakil who was appointed under Shah Jahan, who was an Indian Shehzada, an Indian Muslim, Wazir Khan. Wazir Khan was not an Iranian, but he remained in position of the Diwan for only 1 year. Apart from that, all the wakils and Diwans, the position, if you take out the crux, it is the Iranis who are dominating there. Sadullah Khan held the position between 1646-47 to 1655-56, 10 years. That is a truth. He was the Diwan. That's all. But for the other 20 years, it was the Irani Diwans who continued under Shah. If you look at the positions of the Mir Bakshis, according to the apparatus of empire of Ahmad Ali, there were 13 Mir Bakshis under Shah Jahan, who were, Sunnis, the other Mir Bakshis throughout the empire. They were all Iranis. जितने एम्पायर में मीर बख्शी इनके गुजरे वो सब ईरानी थे, इल्ला 13 के जो दूसरे. Even in the position of Mir Saman, for 3 years, Sadullah Khan occupied the position of the Mir Saman. For the other years of the reign, even on the position of Mir Saman, it was the Iranians who were dominating. As far as the position of Sadr is concerned, for 15 years, the same Sadr continued under Shahjahan, who had been appointed by Jahangir, and he was an Irani. After his demise, there were 2 Indian Muslims, not Turanis. Similarly, if you look at the position of the Subadars, governors, there also we find that the Irani governors predominated over the others. Although we would see that in the position of the governorships, there was a decline of position as far as the non-Muslims were concerned. Now look at one of the tables which has been reproduced by Ahmad Ali in his Apparatus of an Empire. I'll just, from that very table, I'll give you certain figures and you would then understand. We are going to deal with 3 reigns: Akbar, Jahangir and Shahjahan. हमको जो डील करना है वो शाहजहां, लेकिन उसके कंपैरिजन में अकबर और जहांगीर के रेन को हम लोग देखेंगे. फॉर एग्जांपल टेक द ईरानीज. We are talking about the position of the Subadars. And I am giving you the percentages that is calculated by Ahmad Ali. Now, 24% of the Subadars under Akbar were Iranis. 35.5 under Jahangir were Iranis. Under Shahjahan, 45. अकबर के पीरियड में, जो पीरियड ऑफ सुलह कह रहा है, जहां काजी दुल्ला शूस्तरी ये कहते हुए नजर आते हैं कि ये वो पीरियड है कि जहां किसी तकैये की जरूरत नहीं है, और जहां बदायनी ये कहते हैं कि अगर आप ईरानियों को एक तरफ खड़ा करें, या यूं कहता है वो कि अगर आप तो ईरानियों को एक तरफ खड़ा करें तो उसमें आम तौर से ज्यादातर शिया उधर ही चले जाएंगे. मोस्ट ऑफ देम अकॉर्डिंग टू बदायूनी ऑल्सो, अमंग अगर दूसरी भी लिस्टें देखिए उसमें भी generally accepted है that most of the Iranians were Shias. Not all, but most of them. And now what you see, अगर 24% सूबादार जो हैं वो अकबर के अंडर भी ईरानी है, तो शाहजहां के अंडर में 45, जहांगीर के बीच में 35.5. उनके पीरियड में भी बढ़ा है, लेकिन उतना लेवल नहीं पहुंचा है, बीच बीच में है अकबर और शाहजहां. As far as Turanis are concerned, Subadars under Akbar 42%. Under Jahangir, there's a decline, 23%. Under Shahjahan, further decline, 22%. An increase in the level of the Iranis, a decrease in the level of the Turanis. Almost half if you compare it from the period of Akbar. Afghans under Akbar, you know it well that Afghans were never preferred by the Mughals, especially so by Akbar. So 0.5%. Under Jahangir, 3.7%. Under Shahjahan, 2%. Indian Muslims or Indian Shahzadas, if under Akbar, that was the period when they were appointed for the first time. Initial appointments is a period with the Indian Shahzadas were recruited first by Akbar, 8.5%. Under Jahangir, 21.3%. जहांगीर के पीरियड में सबसे ज्यादा है. अंडर शाहजहां 10%. याद रखिएगा कि इंडियन शहजादाज भी सूफी हैं, सुन्नी हैं, ये हैं, वो हैं, बहुत कम है शिया. अदर मुस्लिम्स जिनके बारे में हम लोगों को नहीं मालूम है, तो अकबर के पीरियड पे एक है, बाकी का हमें नहीं. As far as the Hindus are concerned, where I am taking into thoroughly takes into account the Rajputs and others all taken together as non-Muslims, under Akbar 15.5% was Subadas. Under Jahangir 2.6. Under Shahjahan only 2%. यहाँ के ऊपर अगर आप आके देखें तो आपको लगता है कि हाँ, उन्होंने भले तुलादान कंटिन्यू किया हो, भले उन्होंने चाहर तस्लीम कंटिन्यू किया हो, भले उन्होंने एस्ट्रोलॉजर्स, एस्ट्रोनॉमर्स की रिक्रूटमेंट शुरू कर दिया हो, भले उन्होंने अपने जो रिश्ते के राठौर्स थे या दूसरे थे उनको हाई पोजीशंस पे पहुंचा दिया हो, लेकिन जहां तक गवर्नरशिप और दूसरा मसला था वहां के ऊपर, और जनरल उस पर नहीं किया उन्होंने. जनरल उस पर अगर आप थराली फिगर्स देखेंगे तो जहां टोटल नंबर ऑफ मनसबदार हैं, ईरानी, तुरानी, राजपूत, वहां तकरीबन स्टेटस को रहा. लेकिन गवर्नरशिप्स पे suddenly we found that there is some sort of a discrimination where the Iranis are the top bureaucrats. Iranis are the persons who are accomplished bureaucrats, for that matter, not the Turanis. But then, as far as Rajputs and Hindus are concerned, अब ये तो नहीं कह सकते they are not good administrators. There is some problem. जहां एकदम से 2% पे आ गए हो तो आप उसको ऐसे ही ब्रश ऑफ नहीं कर सकते. There was some problem. Possibly one of the reasons which has been given is that because Shahjahan was not looking inwards but was looking towards outwards, नॉर्थ वेस्ट की तरफ देख रहे थे, सेंट्रल एशिया और ईरान की तरफ देख रहे थे, ईरान और खुरासान पे नजरें थी उनकी. That is why there was a stress. He was not concerned who is a Hindu, who is a Sunni, who is a Shia. His only concern was that because his eyes was towards a particular region, he wanted. अकबर की आंखें किधर थी? It was towards consolidating the empire, and that is why we find, whether it is the marriage alliances or whether it is the inclusion of the Indian Shahzadas or the Rajputs, it was these people. Remember, when we come to the period of Aurangzeb, we will find Mirza Raja Jai Singh claiming that Akbar did that to consolidate his hold. You should also do it. Now you are trying to consolidate your hold over the Deccan. तो दक्कनी एलिमेंट्स जो हैं, जो मराठा हैं, जो वहां के जो लोग हैं, उनको वैसे ही इंपॉर्टेंस दीजिए जैसे अकबर ने राजपूतों को दी थी. Mirza Raja Jai Singh is very, very clear in that the emphasis which Akbar had given to the Rajputs of North India was to consolidate his empire. तो जो मिर्जा राजा जय सिंह ने अकबर के लिए कहा था, या जो सजेशन बाद में औरंगजेब के लिए दिया था, that is also true for Shahjahan. Shahjahan is not looking towards consolidating the empire because it's already stands consolidated. अब इनकी तरफ से इनको फिक्र नहीं है. अब नए इलाके जिधर इनको कॉन्कर करना है, जिधर बढ़ना है, जिनको अपने जरा सा इन्फ्लुएंस करना है, अब निगाहें जो हैं वो उधर हैं और उधर के लोगों को सेटिस्फाई करने की कोशिश. And that is why both Qazwini and Lahori, Incidentally, all those who have studied in Aligarh know कि एक बादशाहनामा नहीं, there are at least 3 बादशाहनाmas. If we do not consider अमले सवाले, अमले साले को बिल्कुल अलग हम अगर ट्रीट करेंगे, तो सवाले कम्बो की जो किताब है, तो बादशाहनामा जो है, जैसे अकबरनामा अकबर के लिए है, शाहजहां के लिए 3 बादशाहनामा है ऑफिशियल हिस्ट्रीज. One is by Waris, the other is by Qazvini, and the third is by Lahori. As far as Lahori's work is concerned, that is supposed to be the ultimate, because it deals with the history of 20 years of his reign. For the other 10 years, we have Waris and Qazvini, one after the other. All 3 of them were official historians, and all the account of all the 3 works is known as Padshahnama. तो चाहे वो कज़वीनी का अकाउंट हो पादशाहनामा, that has neither been translated nor published so far. So if you look at Qazvini or look at Lahori, Abdul Hamid Lahori, we find that both of these persons, जब शाहजहां की हिस्ट्री लिख रहे हैं तो उसके ओरिजिन्स को ट्रेस कर रहे हैं, उसका खानदान. अबुल फजल ने जब अकबर का किया था तो अलनकुआ तक पहुंच गए थे कि चंगेज की दादी ने कैसे अल्लाह मियाँ की रूह उसमें आ गई थी वगैरह वगैरह. आगे बढ़ गए थे, इस्लामिक हिस्ट्री में गए थे तो शुरू कर दिया था. यहाँ के ऊपर जब वारिस और लाहौरी को खासतौर से अगर हम देखेंगे, where they are trying to give us the origins of Shahjahan, we would find that both Qazvini and Lahori, they trace the origins of Shahjahan only up till Taimur. उसके आगे नहीं बढ़ते. बाबर के अकाउंट को देखिए तो तैमूर ओरिजिन है, लेकिन बहुत बाद की चीज है तैमूर. कहाँ चंगेज हजारों साल पहले कबल इस्लाम, कहाँ तैमूर जो बाद इस्लाम आए. लेकिन शाहजहां का हिस्टोरियन जो है वो तैमूर के ऊपर नहीं बढ़ता है. जो लास्ट जो पहला एंसेस्टर जहां से डील करता है ये लोग, वो सिर्फ तैमूर की हिस्ट्री से डील करते हैं. इन अदर वर्ड्स, नो स्ट्रेस on the non-Muslim origin of the Mughals. Fact is that Taimur was also not a Muslim, properly speaking. कहा जाता है हो गए थे. His sons were all right. चलिए मान भी लेते हैं तैमूर को मुसलमान. But none before Taimur had converted to Islam. And so the histories of Shahjahan's period, they never emphasize on that part of the origin. सिर्फ जहां से इस्लाम आ गया है, इस्लाम के कॉन्टैक्ट में आ गए, वहां से तैमूर से ये शुरू करते हैं. We also find that the ambition of Shahjahan was the conquest of the northwest frontier. आपको मालूम है, आपने पढ़ा भी है. जिसने नहीं पढ़ा है, I would recommend that please do that, especially the article of Ahmad Ali, the scientific frontier पे जो उन्होंने लिखा है, Balkh and Badakhshan. One of the path-breaking, very spectacular works of Akbar was the creation of northwest frontier as the frontier bit of the Mughal Empire, the scientific frontier, you can say. Abul Fazal says that is the scientific frontier. Hindu Kush. Beyond Hindu Kush was the Central Asia. Everything this side of the Hindu Kush was the part of the Mughal Empire. This pain ka claim. That was what Akbar had done. And now for the first time, Shahjahan is interested to cross that border again, to go to that side, अब्दुल्ला खां उज़्बेक को अकबर ने बिल्कुल साफ लिख दिया था, उसके उधर आप क्या कर रहे हैं, खुरासान पे हमला करते हैं और किसको कॉर्टर करते हैं, क्या करते हैं, दैट इज नॉट माय कंसर्न, माय टेरिटरी इज दिस, ये हद है। इसके आगे सेंट्रल एशिया, मेरा कोई लेना देना नहीं। लेकिन यहां पहली बार ना कहें इसे, सेकेंड टाइम, बिकॉज द फर्स्ट इंडियन रूलर to cross the Hindu Kush and go beyond Hindu Kush was Ashoka. And it was after Ashoka the Great, for the first time in the entire Indian history, an Indian king who wants to go beyond the Hindu Kush, beyond this territory of the Himalayas, is Shahjahan. He is looking towards the Uzbek Khanate Empire and the Safavid Empire, especially the area of the Mavraun Nahar, the Transoxiana. In fact, it is claimed in the texts written during the period of Shah Jahan, whether it's Lahori or Qazvini or Waris, that Mavraun Nahar, Transoxiana, is dominion of the Mughals. अब हमारा आबा अजदाद का मुल्क जो है वो ये इलाका है. Thus we find that in 1638, within a few years of becoming the emperor, Kandahar is taken from the Safavids by Shah Jahan. (1638) Kandahar campaign is, and in 1646, Balkh and Badakhshan are invaded by Shah Jahan. They result in failure. जितनी सक्सेस इनको चाहिए थी, जो कॉन्केस्ट चाहिए थी, वो नहीं मिली. एटलीस्ट दे वेंट. In 1647, they withdrew from the Balkh area, but once again kept on trying. In 1648, they had to leave Kandahar as well. लेकिन हारे नहीं शाहजहां. 1649, 1652, 1653, तकरीबन हर कुछ साल के बाद attempts were made towards Central Asia, Balkh and Badakhshan, Kandahar. He could not access. One of the commanders of Shah Jahan during these campaigns was Aurangzeb himself. Jaswant Singh, Dara Shikoh, they were the people who were sent to these campaigns. They could not win, that's another matter. But at least Shah Jahan made several attempts. तो नजर जो है वो सेंट्रल एशिया की तरफ है, बार बार अटेम्प्ट्स. लास्ट अटेम्प्ट इज इन 1653. 56 में वॉर ऑफ सक्सेशन हो गई. तो ऑलमोस्ट टिल दी, और पहली जो अटेम्प्ट है इनकी 1638 पे, टिल डाउन टू हिज लास्ट ईयर्स व्हेन ही वाज इन पावर. Throughout this period, throughout the period from 1638 down to 1653, almost the entire period of his reign, we find Shah Jahan trying to his attempts towards conquest of सेंट्रल एशिया, नॉर्थ वेस्ट, तो उसकी निगाहें जो है दक्कन की तरफ नहीं है, इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट की तरफ नहीं है. And that is one of the reasons probably why he's not paying that much attention towards the Rajputs. He is more interested in the Turanis and the Iranis. On the one hand, he is trying to emphasize his Turani origins. But then on the other hand, he is also not trying to antagonize the Iranis. क्योंकि निगाहें जो हैं वो कंधार फोर्ट के ऊपर भी, उन लोगों को कैसे कॉन्कर करेंगे अगर ये साबित हो जाएगा कि दे आर एंटी. तो अभी कॉन्कर जंग नहीं वो हो रही है, लेकिन निगाहें उधर हैं तो उनको भी समझ के चलना है, उनको साथ लेके चलना है. जैसे अकबर को जब राजपूताना कॉन्कर करना था तो who was taking the Rajputs into service. अब अकबर को सेंट्रल एशिया की तरफ निगाह है, तो ही इज ट्राइंग टू प्लीज दोस पीपल आउट देयर, चाहे वो सेंट्रल एशियंस तुरानीज हो चाहे वो ईरानीज. एंड दैट इज व्हाई वी फाइंड दैट अंडर शाहजहां also, although we find that there is an emphasis towards Islam because these are the Islamic lands where he is trying his conquests to take place, but he is ruling over an area which is mostly Hindus and Rajputs. And that is why we find that Shahjahan starts dabbling and mixing his religion with politics. जहां पे इनको सुन्नियों को भी खुश करना है, ईरानी एलिमेंट को भी खुश करना है, और हिंदुओं को भी साथ में लेके चलना टू सम एक्सटेंट, ये भी ना भागने पाए. As far as the larger nobility was concerned, as I keep on saying from the beginning of the lecture, that an equilibrium was tried to be maintained. But on the other hand, because of his emphasis uh, towards Central Asia, उनकी पॉलिसीज में थोड़ा सा शिफ्ट हमको, थोड़ा सा emphasis में फर्क हमको यहाँ के ऊपर नजर आने लगता है. We would end here for today. And for other parts, for example, what are his various attempts towards the religious groups, his relations with the various religious groups, that we would be dealing with in the second part of the lecture on Shahjahan. Thank you very much.